Hello, everyone. Welcome. We'll get started in a few minutes. We're just waiting for a few more people to join, but welcome. All right, we have a lot to get to today, so I guess we'll just get started. Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to our Chang School event, LinkedIn for Continuous Learners, a workshop for navigating career growth and pivots. My name is Truc Nguyen, and I'm the manager of storytelling and strategy at the Chang School. Before we get started today, I would like to acknowledge the land on which Toronto Metropolitan University is built upon. Toronto is in the Dish with One Spoon territory. The Dish with One Spoon is a treaty between the Anishinaabe, Mississaugas, and Haudenosaunee that bound them to share the territory and protect the land. Subsequent Indigenous nations and peoples, Europeans, and all newcomers have been invited into this treaty in the spirit of peace, friendship, and respect. I want to pay my respects to the Indigenous peoples, elders, and ancestors who stewarded and cared for nature and the people who lived on the land where TMU is located today. At the university, we have made a deep and long-lasting commitment to truth and reconciliation. I invite you to learn more about this work online. Now, I'd like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's event. Your microphone is muted throughout the event so as to not disturb other attendees or the presenters. We are also striving to create an accessible space for all and recognize the ways that anyone, regardless of disability status, might benefit from accessibility features. As such, we have automated captioning available, which you can activate in the toolbar at the bottom of your screen. You will also have the opportunity to submit questions during today's workshop by typing them into the chat box of the control panel. Finally, please note that the information provided during this event is for general information purposes only. Now, before we kick off today's workshop, I would like to introduce Gary Hepburn, Dean at the Chang School of Continuing Education.
Thank you for the introduction, Truc. On behalf of the Chang School, it is my pleasure to welcome each of you to this afternoon's workshop. At the Chang School, we're deeply committed to helping our learners develop the skills and knowledge to reach their learning goals and respond to current and future needs of the workforce. One of the ways we fulfill this promise to our learners is through partnering with industry experts to share their unique perspective on pressing topics that will offer our students a competitive edge in their careers. We're confident that you will find a lot of value in today's workshop and that you will walk away with some highly useful tips and tools for enhancing your personal brand through LinkedIn. On that note, I'm delighted to introduce this afternoon's facilitator, Isiana Bestarai. Isiana is a co-founder of Monday Girl, Canada's leading network and newsletter for professional women. Monday Girl members get unlimited access to resources, a vibrant community, and mentorship from leading women at top companies, including Google, Shopify, Lululemon, Indigo, and more. Monday Girl currently reaches a combined audience of over 50,000 users. They have hosted more than 25 sold-out events and have been recognized by Breakfast Television, CBC, The Globe and Mail, Global News, Bay Street Bull, and more. Previously, a video producer and YouTube curator, leading video campaigns for Intelligent Change, Air Canada, Korea Tourism, and Sunwing, Isiana is a creative at heart who reaches a combined audience of 23,000 across platforms. Please join me in welcoming Isiana.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Gary. Hi, everyone. I'm really excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me. All right, so I guess we'll get into it. So the next hour or so, we're going to be chatting about some ways to elevate. I guess you can go back to the first slide before I get into it, but just to give an introduction, we're going to talk about elevating your personal brand through LinkedIn to help you grow your career, whether you're navigating a career pivot into a new industry or a new type of role. So just to start, so I can get a sense of who's all here today, and thank you for joining us. Is anyone here currently, and you can let us know in the chat, are you currently navigating a career pivot? Maybe you're figuring it out, like what's your next move? Let us know, let me know. I'd love to hear if that's you. And while you're sharing, if we go to the next slide, I'll do a little introduction about me and my background in Monday Girl. So again, my name's Deanna. I'm one of the co-founders of Monday Girl alongside my partner, Rachel. Awesome, I'm seeing lots of career pivots, yes. Okay, so we're not all alone in our journeys here. Amazing, keep on sharing. But just a little bit of backstory on if you haven't heard about us, about Monday Girl and why we exist. To put really simply, building your career alone is just, it's pretty hard and it's not very fun. So if you don't know many people, maybe you've moved to a new city or you're trying to enter a new industry and you don't have that many contacts, getting your foot in the door is really tough. And I remember when I first graduated, like I was so lost. I didn't know anyone. And it was a struggle in the dark of trying to reach out to people. And often also finding a mentor, which everyone tells us is so important and so helpful for growing your career, can often feel like a very awkward and difficult experience. Like, how do you ask someone to be your mentor? Or if you don't see anyone that you relate to necessarily in your space. And of course, just in general, networking usually just sucks. It's the exhaustion of sending a million LinkedIn messages or hoping someone replies, or those boring, stuffy corporate networking events where it's usually a lot of awkward small talk. They're often very male-dominated spaces, at least in my experience, and you leave feeling exhausted. So if we go to the next slide, we built Monday Girl. We wanted to build a community and a space for next generation women to build their networks and careers in a way that was actually fun and a lot easier. So a lot of our members refer to us kind of as the boys club for women, and we make finding that process of building your network, finding a mentor, finding those open doors, getting career support, all of that into something that you actually look forward to. So I'm delighted to share some of my knowledge and background and our learnings I've connected with. If we go to the next slide, I'll take you through our agenda. I've connected with a ton of mentors and industry leaders, and over the years kind of collected. We get to learn from them through their sessions. All of these tips and tricks, kind of how to, like hiring managers, what are they looking for? All those things. So this is what we're going to go through. We'll go through some tips on how you can really optimize your LinkedIn profile for pivoting, especially since many of us here are navigating a pivot, I can see. And just really make sure that your profile is a representation of your best foot forward. We will also chat about networking on LinkedIn with the intention of growing your connections for pivoting your career. We'll talk about who should we connect with, and really how to reach out and build those genuine relationships. And I will share some templates with you as well. And note, as we go along, I'll pause and feel free to pop your questions into the chat throughout the session, and we can kind of make a chat out of it along the way. Okay, so if we go to the next slide, I have another question for you. Really quickly, I'd love to get a feeler on how we all currently feel about LinkedIn. Do you enjoy it or do you dread using LinkedIn right now? I'd love to know how you feel about the platform right now. Personally, I have a mixed relationship with it. Mostly enjoy. That's good to hear. Does anyone prefer to scroll the homepage or do you like posting on it? I'd love to know. Feel free to share in the chat. I also kind of a follow-up question. If you do use LinkedIn or you do like posting it, like how often are you posting on it? How often are you sharing maybe wins or sharing an update in your industry? Sandy feels like it's overwhelming, can definitely be overwhelming. Monthly, lurk and repost. That's a common one, kind of just lurking and seeing what people are posting. Seeing a lot of mixed feelings, same. It's definitely intimidating. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of people feel intimidated, anxiety. LinkedIn anxiety is real. Yeah, amazing. Okay, if we go to, we'll skip ahead to the next slide. And one more ahead. I have one last question before we get into it. I wanted to know how many of us feel that our current LinkedIn profiles is a current representation of your best foot forward. Like if you were to send your LinkedIn profile to maybe a hiring manager right now, you would be like, yeah, this is, I'm proud of my profile. This is exactly what I want to put forward. It's matches my resume, needs improvement, partly 50-50. Okay, a lot of mixed feelings. So we're all kind of like getting there. And I hope by the end of the session, we'll be able to implement some steps to get to that level where we're like, yes, this is exactly how I'd like to represent myself professionally. Intimidating. Yeah, LinkedIn can be a tricky place. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for sharing and giving me a sense of where everyone's at. If we go to the next slide. I just want to give you an idea of, I think all of us understand and know that LinkedIn is very important when it comes to your career, but like how important. So 78% of recruiters are using LinkedIn to source talent, and having chatted with a ton of hiring managers, including my co-founder, Rachel, who actually interviews and hires tech talent as part of her everyday role. She's constantly looking at LinkedIn, and they treat LinkedIn almost as equally as important as your resume. It's something that recruiters and hiring managers look at to determine whether they want to bring you in for an interview. It gives them a better, a bigger picture of look at who you are. It kind of gives them a sense of you as how are you going to be like to work with? Are you a team player? Are you engaged? And it's a good thing to keep in mind some of the indicators that hiring managers are looking for when they're viewing your profile, so that when you are updating your profile, you can position yourself in the strongest way possible with those indicators in mind. So a couple things they're looking for is your attention to detail. Your engagement on LinkedIn can also signal how engaged and passionate are you as a professional. So if you've never posted anything before, that might be a hint that people might think like, are you engaged? Are you passionate? The more you post, that is a clear indicator that you are. It also signals to them if you have a network of strong referrals or a credible network of people who can vet you. So it's kind of like, when someone sends you a message and you've never heard of them, you're going to take a look at their profile and see, are they a real person? Are they credible? Same thing when you're applying to jobs or you're reaching out to people. And unfortunately, the reality is for a lot of recruiters, if they see someone has less than 50 connections, that can suggest to recruiters that you might be recluse who knows very few people, or maybe you're a little bit paranoid about engaging with tech or social media, or think it's a little bit scary, which is totally normal. But unfortunately, when again, back to the example of when someone reaches out to you, if they don't have a profile picture or they don't have anything on their profile, you're going to think, oh, this person looks kind of sketchy. I'm probably not going to engage back with them, not going to connect with them. So again, think about it like that when people are connecting with you and hiring managers are looking at your profile. It's a representation of your credibility as a candidate. Of course, how you're communicating your accomplishments and your achievements and sharing what you bring to the table on LinkedIn. LinkedIn can really indicate to others if you are a high performer, which is definitely something that, of course, companies are all looking for. So immediately, with all these kind of indicators in mind, a quick tip that you can now do is take a look at the LinkedIn profiles of people whose careers that you admire. So I recommend like taking an hour, scroll through LinkedIn, kind of find like top 5 profiles of people that you really admire and take a look at how are they positioning themselves on their profiles? Like what skills are they really highlighting? How are they telling their story? What sections have they included? What kind of posts are they sharing? reference these and think about how you can elevate your own profile with these goals in mind. Okay.
Just chiming in with a question in the chat here that I thought is really timely to what you're saying. There's an attendee is wondering if there are any industries that rely more on LinkedIn or less, because this person is, working at the university and have never really used it for, job applications, but they might be transitioning to roles outside higher ed. And they're wondering if they will need to be better on LinkedIn for that.
Great question. Yes, I definitely think that, and I have seen certain industries are going to be more inclined to use things like LinkedIn to vet their candidates and source talent. I'd say like tech, marketing, the sort of industries that are front and center of innovation, maybe business, those are the ones where if that's your space, you're definitely going to want to focus on LinkedIn. Maybe in industries that are such as education or things like that, it might not matter as much. So kind of play it by ear and figure out, okay, what is your industry? What direction are they moving into? That's a major factor, I would say.
Great, thank you.
Great question. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. Let's talk about some do's and don'ts for optimizing your profile and really elevating your personal and professional brand, especially if you're navigating that career pivot or job hunting, or just want to, in general, always have your profile ready to go to attract more opportunities. You never know what's going to come your way anytime. So we're going to cover some really key elements to make your profile stand out. So first up, if we go to the next slide, the first thing is the more filled out and complete your profile is, the better. LinkedIn is often updating and releasing new features, new sections, new things that you can add to your profile. So keeping tabs on those updates, and as you log into LinkedIn, you'll probably notice throughout the year that there are new buttons that you can add, new sections. So definitely keeping up with that is a good idea. Again, having that complete profile gives you that credibility and immediate sense to someone. Okay, this person's legit. I'm interested in learning more about them or chatting with them or taking a look further down your profile and seeing what you have to offer. So look at your profile and see if there are any sections that you're missing or if there's something that you can add. I think that just keeping like just your job title or just your company is really short. Like you can give me more, give me more. That's what we're looking for here. So take advantage of those features and segments. Another thing to remember is that LinkedIn is a very search engine friendly platform. So having keywords at the top of your profile, like in your title, so keywords such as like your industry niches, topics that you're interested in talking about, your core competencies, key skills, things like that. You're more likely to pop up if recruiters are searching for talent. Like you would want your profile to pop up if they're looking for someone. So keep that in mind. A couple other things that are really good to add, as you'll notice, one of the profiles here, there's name pronunciation. Adding that to your profile is a really good idea. So I think you can do it with the voice. So highlighting your top skills, your core competencies, all those things right at the top of your profile. Like this is your first impression to everyone. So spend some time on that top part of your profile and make it look exactly what we talked about, like your best foot forward. And of course, we're going to go down the page as well, but don't forget to take advantage of all those sections like, are you part of any notable organizations, volunteering, featured projects, featured posts, additional, anything that you can add there, courses you've taken, like you're going to want to add that to your profile and stack it up. One thing also to note is you might want, when you're thinking about pivoting to an industry, you're going to want to tailor what you're including, such as your education or the projects and things like that. Tailor them to what's most relevant to your field of interest. So if you're at a point in your career where you've had a number of years under your belt and you're ready for that next step, I probably wouldn't still keep things like your high school volunteer experience or things that are kind of outdated or not really relevant anymore. So it's okay. You can cut things out that aren't relevant and really just make sure that everything on your profile is most relevant to the direction that you're going in. Lastly, the more information you give LinkedIn, the more it's going to be able to, of course, recommend and tailor opportunities and suggestions. So, you know, you can put those notifications on. If you are looking for a certain type of role, LinkedIn will suggest them to you or be able to find you easily again if you're giving it more to work with. Okay, let's move on to the next point. So if you want to go back, I think we skipped ahead. Here, I think we were, yes, perfect. Okay, so a common question that we get often is, if I'm job hunting or pivoting, how do I do that discreetly without my current employer knowing or seeing? LinkedIn has this great feature, if you didn't know, where you can actually signal that you are open for work and actively looking without totally advertising it to your current company. So under your profile, under the open to button at the top of your profile, you can check off the box where it says, you know, recruiters only, to share that information. So you don't really need to worry about, should I make an entirely new profile for job hunting or anything like that. So it's a great option. Okay, moving on to the next slide. So another, I think, super underrated and really important profile feature is making sure that you spend some time on that bio or that about section. And a few things to note about it for pivoting or growing your career. Like, this section is a more fun version of a cover letter, essentially. So your about section, your bio, is a chance to tell your story, show your personality. People want to know, what kind of person are you going to be like to work with? So you can expand on things that your resume doesn't talk about. This is a great opportunity to share, like, why did you take a gap year? Maybe there's some spaces on your in your experience or in your resumes. Maybe you took that gap year to upskill or to travel. Like, you can talk about it here and give people some context. You can talk about why you're pivoting, what you bring to the table, what direction you're moving. That's definitely a question that hiring managers are going to want to know, especially if you are coming in from a different industry. So I recommend doing this by really emphasizing, especially if you are pivoting, really emphasizing here, like, those transferable skills, the core competencies that you have. You can also talk about if you're currently working on, like, currently pursuing my MBA, or I'm enrolled in XYZ course, like, talk about those things. Your bio also gives hiring managers a huge sense of your writing and communication skills. My partner, Rachel, as a hiring manager for a large tech company, your writing skills, no matter what the role, like, this is generally a skill that is pretty coveted across the board, across industries and roles. So here's a chance to kind of demonstrate and show, how do you write? That's something that people look for. And you're looking at actually my co-founder's bio on screen right now. And in this example, there's many different styles and ways that you can craft your about section, but this particular one, she uses the point form style, which is sometimes easier to really show in a snapshot her career highlights, her biggest accomplishments, major proof points, and the impact that she's had and can bring to the table. So this is definitely something that you want to highlight in your profile. So any impressive metrics that show your impact, even if you are moving into a space that you don't have direct experience in. The fact that you were able to, increase sales by X% or whatever it may be, this shows that, like, okay, so you were able to have that sort of type of impact here. Who's to say that you can't also bring that type of impact in a different space, or those kind of results over here? So this really just shows that you're a capable professional. So don't shy away from those impact metrics. I want to show you a couple other, if you skip ahead, a couple other examples of the bio section. So again, there's a number of ways you can write this. You can write it in first person, third person. This is paragraph style. You can do point form. I think this example, this one really tells the person's story and shows personality. It's also not overly stuffy. It's casual. It's more relaxed feeling, but still professional, which is definitely the kind of vibe that is more appropriate for LinkedIn. We skip ahead. One last example to share. This is a third person bio example. So I would suggest picking the style that's most authentic to you. And I usually see, the more advanced you are in your career, also this type of bio where in the third person becomes more common. Okay, next, some water. All right. Similar to your bio, don't sleep on the experience section of your profile. The most common mistakes I see happening are when people just add the companies that they worked for and the job titles they had and leave it there. And this part should not be a copy paste of your resume either, especially if you're applying to jobs, hiring managers, like they already have your resume in their hands. They can already see that. So they're coming to your LinkedIn for supplementary information and clues about how you might bring something different to their company. So a lot of people also, what they'll do is add bullet points under each role, and they'll just say something like responsible for XYZ. And in today's competitive job market, again, you really want to highlight those impressive results and the impact that you bring to the table. So I recommend for each position, each role that you had, adding these skills that you learned or you really cultivated there, and at least one impressive metric for each role.
I just wanted to jump in because there's a couple of questions in the chat about, this section. I'm just wondering, someone is asking, what is the difference between bio and about information section?
It's the same thing. Sorry, I'm using the word.
Okay.
Just calls it about you.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then actually you touched on this briefly, but how, Karen is asking, how do you best differentiate between your LinkedIn profile and your resume? Like, can you use parts of your resume in your LinkedIn? But how would you make it different?
Good question. So when I'm building my LinkedIn profile, have your resume beside you, but now it's like, because your resume, you only have, one page, usually. I'll always just give one page. So you don't have much space to expand on. There's not much real estate to expand on, like what you really brought to the table or did in all those positions that you're listing. So LinkedIn, now you can expand. Now you have room to tell your story and kind of provide further context. I would really think about LinkedIn as the more colorful version of you. Like it's a way to show your personality, tell your story more. And it's more informal. It's kind of, people go there for a sense of like, what are you like as a person to work with? What is your personality? So you can really focus more on like, how do I show my soft skills, my attention to detail, projects I'm really proud of. It's just supplementary detail and a little bit more pizzazz, if you will, just the more kind of colorful personality version of you. That's how I would think about it. But you can use your resume as like a base beside you. So you can cross-check, okay, what did I include on here? What's missing from the story here? And build it that way. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, no, that's great. Just one more question and then I'll let you continue your presentation. But there's two questions here from Rasha and someone else, another attendee. What about people who don't have much experience yet? Or, do you have any tips for building a profile for someone who is early or, early mid-stage in their career, and maybe they don't have a lot of these, maybe accolades? If you're like an assistant or it might not be able to say that, oh, you've delivered this result necessarily.
Yeah. I would argue that point. I think that no matter what you do, like if you think back to any projects you worked on, no matter what the role, there is always some sort of impact that you can bring to the table or something that you've done. And it doesn't, I know that not every job, you're not directly responsible for pushing sales or numbers like that. And sometimes it can be kind of hard to figure out, okay, what are the metrics that apply to my job, especially if I'm not maybe in like a business type role or things like that. But I encourage you to, I can't think of like an example right at this moment, but I can guarantee you for almost every single role, we can find an impact or some sort of kind of impressive thing that you did and brought to the table. Like what did you do with your time there? Maybe you improved efficiency, or maybe you, made over some like a website and it's brand awareness. Like there's always something that you can bring to the table and really highlight. So if you don't have a lot of years of experience or a lot of past roles, think about like, what are those projects you like, focus on projects. What are the number, like you have experience there. Of course, yes, exactly. I see a comment, what you did in school, volunteer experience, just anything that you worked on or any time that where you brought value to the world and professionally, focus on those experiences, those spaces, freelance work, passion projects, that all counts for that's types of experiences.
Perfect. Thank you.
I also saw a question, kind of word count for the different areas of our profile. So I would suggest kind of similar to what you see on screen, like kind of keeping each section sort of like maybe 3 to 5 points. You don't have to have a huge like paragraph there, but kind of just expand on what is this role, like what did you do there, what was the impact, what did you bring to the table. And lastly, before we move on, I would suggest, especially if you're pivoting or trying to advance in your industry, really for each role or project or whatever you want to highlight, really focus on those skills, those both soft and hard, that are most relevant to the industry or field that you may be trying to enter or pivot into. So like if you're in social media right now, you want to get into tech, under your social media experience, you can still highlight the skills that are applicable in tech or the area that you're going to, like data analysis. You're definitely, you know, analyzing those analytics, like you have that ability, you have that skill, conflict resolution, innovation, all those types of things. Okay, let's go on to the next section. So now beyond just your standalone profile, whether you post and what you share on LinkedIn is actually something that a lot of hiring managers and recruiters look at. So I know that earlier, some of us have maybe posted once or twice, maybe some of us aren't, but this is a chance what you're posting can actually give them a sense of who you are, your personality, what you have to bring to the table. And again, it signals, are you engaged? Do you uplift others? Are you sharing your learnings? Do you bring value? Are you sharing value with, you know, your community? So when thinking about like, how can I share value with my community? So things that you can post, like celebrate yours and others' wins, share your learnings from projects, or maybe you attended a conference. Did you learn any really interesting industry insights? Like share that. News, maybe you can comment your 2 cents on an interesting article. Participate in those types of conversations. You also don't have to just totally make your own posts. Like you can comment on other people's posts, and that's something that people can see on your profile. Reposting other people's posts and then just adding your 2 cents at the top. I would suggest, you know, challenging yourself, maybe set a calendar reminder to nourish your network and engage once a month. That's totally enough. That's enough for someone, if you're applying to jobs, they can see that you are engaged, you are sharing, and what are the types of things that are you sharing?
Right. And would you say this is a good sort of, especially for people who are looking to pivot? Because, you know, I think it's a good way to demonstrate your interest and in a new field, right?
Absolutely. So if you are pivoting, so you're coming from a certain industry and you don't have that direct experience yet, start engaging in those conversations in your new industry that you want to get into. Like share what's happening, what have you learned, what are you seeing? Like you can already start engaging in this space, especially if you're going to be in it, you know, start having those conversations. So comment on other people's posts that are related to topics of where you're moving into. So yeah, I think like industry insights, learnings, especially if you're taking like courses or attending online webinars, like anything like that, there's lots to pull from. Just start putting yourself in that space and communicating that this is your new space kind of thing.
No, I love it.
If we go forward, here's a few other examples that you can share and post. These are examples of how you can bring value to others and help establish credibility in your industry, in your community. Okay. Did I miss any other questions?
There are some more general questions, but I thought we could get to them towards the end.
Yeah, let's do it. Okay, let's move on. So wrapping up your profile, here is a quick checklist that you can go through if you are polishing up your LinkedIn to pivot your career. So the first one, whether or not you are pivoting into something new, even if you're not planning to leave your current industry, I don't recommend making your profile all about the company that you currently work for. You know, it's the economy, you never know what's going to happen. And you are an independent professional outside of your current company. And as the market and companies are always changing and growing, you never know when your next opportunity is going to come up. So you always want to position yourself as ready and focus on what you bring to the table as a professional rather than so much about your company. If you are pivoting industries or growing your career, there is a good chance that all of you are currently working on or upskilling. You're all, learning as much as you can right now. Maybe you're enrolled in courses, maybe you're getting a certification. So share them in your posts, share them that you're enrolled. Like, what are you learning as you go along the way? Share your learnings, your insights. So highlight to recruiters that you are actively learning and growing as a professional. That's important. And again, we talked about highlighting those transferable skills. And here I want to emphasize that just because again, say you work in social media right now, and you want to pivot into the tech industry, like you may think that you don't have direct experience compared to other candidates already in the tech field, but actually there's so many transferable skills you can emphasize. Storytelling, reading data, and figuring out, okay, how do I apply this and make my next move? So don't forget to really consider those things and don't underestimate yourself and how much you actually can bring to the table to your new industry already. Lastly, we talked about the importance of actually engaging on LinkedIn and posting your pivoting. So start participating in those conversations in your new field, start building connections, commenting on relevant posts, sharing learnings, articles, insights in the space that you're going into. So that's kind of the whole recap of our profile. Let's move on to the next section. So I'm going to pause here. I know earlier we shared that many of us are pivoting. So since our next topic, we're talking about the ins and outs of networking on LinkedIn for pivoting. In the chat here, I think this is a great opportunity to network here while we're here. So if you are pivoting, would love to hear, maybe share what you're pivoting into, and perhaps, feel free to make a few connections here in the session, maybe drop your LinkedIn and connect. Would love to hear what areas are people moving into.
And while everyone's putting in their answers into the chat, someone actually asked a comment about, what do you mean by pivoting? Can you please elaborate? So I thought maybe, to me, pivoting is if you're in a certain industry or in a certain role, but you're looking for maybe a different role in the same industry, or maybe the same role in a different industry. There's so many different ways. It's sort of just a term that I think of as, you just want to make a change in your career, whether it's in your job or your industry or your responsibilities. But is there anything else that you're thinking in terms of pivoting?
Oh, I think that really hits the nail on the head. I think the other word that comes to mind for me is just you're making a transition. So you're transitioning from one space to another. And that doesn't mean you're necessarily switching industries totally. Maybe it's just a department in your current company, or maybe it's a type of role, but you're still kind of in the same area. So it can mean a lot of things, but I just think of it as a transition. I'm seeing lots.
That's great. Yeah, lots of great answers in here.
Amazing. Thanks for sharing, everyone. That's awesome. Okay, so yeah, let's talk about networking for the purpose of pivoting. How do we build up our network in that new space that we're entering? So let's move on to the next slide. We'll skip one more ahead as well. Okay, so I want to focus on 3 main networking goals when you are pivoting or transitioning. And the first one could not be more important. If there's anything that you take away from today's session, it's number 1. If you're pivoting, the number 1 thing that you would want to focus on is setting up informational interviews. So for those who don't know what an informational interview is, it's when you interview someone and you're just for the purpose of simply learning more about what they do and the space that they're in. How did they get there? Like, you're interviewing someone professionally. Informational interviews are going to give you 2 major benefits. One is the opportunity to learn about your new field of interest before starting that pivoting journey. So if you set up a bunch of informational interviews with different people in the industry or type of role that you're pursuing or thinking about and wondering if it's right for you, they're going to be able to tell you things like, what should you know about the industry before getting into? What skills are really important right now? What are companies looking for? How did they get to where they are today? What do they wish that they knew before going into the entering their space? Could they also recommend any resources or education or publications that they would recommend you check out or take? The second benefit is informational interviews are a great excuse to make a new connection. So building your network is it's the second, biggest benefit of setting these up. It's a really easy way to get yourself onto different people's radars, gives you a reason. Why are you reaching out to build those new connections? Of course, the more connections you have, the more opportunity for opportunities. And that's awesome to hear, Barbara. So our second, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, so something else I just wanted to mention too is, a lot of the attendees today are, taking courses at the Chang School. And I just want to mention that you can also have making these connections can also happen with your instructors. It could also happen with with your classmates. It doesn't necessarily have to just be only on LinkedIn too. But I think it's, it's really valuable what you're saying, because like Barbara said, it made a difference for her when she pivoted roles. And I think it's also good, because sometimes you have an idea of what a certain industry is like, but possibly, the reality might be really different, and it gives you a lot more information before you make a plunge, take the plunge and make a big change.
Absolutely. That's exactly it. And also some of us might not even know exactly what our next move is. Like maybe you're like, I don't know what I want to do next. Like this gives you a chance to, if you reach out to different people in different spaces, you can kind of learn more about it and be like, oh, maybe I'm interested in learning more about this, or is this right for me? So that's yeah, exactly. So moving to the second networking goal here, our second networking goal as we're navigating a pivot is to tap into your existing network. I think you'd be so surprised at the people that you already know. Like, a lot of people more than you think, and all of those people individually have their own network of connections too. And I think that a lot of us forget to consider the connections we might already have. So thinking about, like your alumni network, sports leagues, family and friends, past colleagues. So we'll talk about that and kind of how to check in with those and how do we maybe find new connections from them. The other point I want to emphasize, especially if you're job hunting or anything like that, just overall in your career, you don't want to be known as someone who's transactional. Networking is about building strong relationships, genuine relationships with people. So you don't want to be just, connecting with your network only when you need something or only when you're looking for that next move or you're job hunting. So just regularly throughout the year, actively checking in and engaging with your existing relationships. So when opportunity comes, when you are job hunting, like they're much more likely to want to help you or refer you to someone. And of course, I think 80% of jobs are filled through networking. So, if we can focus on networking and not just like cold applications, it's definitely something that's going to take your job hunt much further. The last networking goal we're going to focus on is networking with hiring managers and recruiters. So once you start actually submitting applications, don't just apply for jobs and just wait to see if the company gets back to you. I would suggest always adding this as a final step to your job application checklist. Personally reaching out to the hiring manager or recruiter can help you stand out. It will put yourself on their radar, bump your application. But again, you just want to make sure that your profile, all the things we talked about before, make sure your profile is ready to go. And again, a representation of your best foot forward before you start doing that. And we will go through some templates to help you achieve each of these 3 networking goals in a second. And for Ali's question, how do you deal with recruiters who have ghosted you? I think that keeping in mind that recruiters definitely get, hundreds of messages every day, don't take it personally. And it doesn't hurt to follow up and reach back out maybe a week later, kind of space it out, just bumping your message, putting yourself on their radar, but understanding like not every message is going to get through. They're dealing with really full inboxes every single day. Okay, if we go to the next slide, before we get into the templates, I just want to cover who should we actually look for? Who should we chat with? Who should we set up informational interviews with? So one thing I always recommend, especially if you are pivoting, is look for people who have also navigated a career pivot in their past. So if you're looking at their experience, you can say, look for people who have maybe started in media and now they're in tech, or those are going to be people that will probably have some really good insights to share with you on how did they navigate their transitions. So take some time to look through people's trajectories, their paths. People with non-linear paths or have really interesting points in their careers are always great people to chat with. Next, of course, if you're looking to connect with people who you're going to want to make connections in your new field of interest, of course. So, think about those people that work at the companies that you have your eye on, roles you're interested in. But I also want to put on your radar, consider connecting with people who are also in adjacent industries. You don't have to connect with say you want to become a project manager. Don't just connect with project managers. There's lots you can learn with, from people who are in adjacent roles or adjacent industries. And also those people themselves will also have connections in their network that they can potentially direct you or make introductions for. I highly recommend also, once you start landing those informational interviews and scheduling them, at the end of the chat, every time you connect with someone new, or even with someone you already know, say hey, is there anyone else in your network that you recommend I reach out to, or that you could connect with me about this as well? Always adding this at the end of your conversation. More often than not, people are always happy to refer you to someone else. And this is just a really easy way to snowball your connections organically. And it makes those introductions, instead of you having to cold reach out, having a warm lead or a referral, so much easier. And of course, so connecting with hiring managers and recruiters after you apply, kind of how I would suggest to go about this, recruiters especially, you can just introduce yourself and say, hey, I'm an X professional with X years of experience in Y. I've been able to, and then maybe share an impressive metric or impact that you bring to the table. And you can say something like, there are any good opportunities on your radar that might be a good fit? I'd love to chat. Something really quick and short and sweet like that, just putting yourself on the radar. Okay. Let's go to the next slide. So last thing before I share the templates with you, some quick tips for reaching out to people that you don't know already for informational interviews to keep in mind when you're crafting your messages. So a few ways to increase the chances of a stranger essentially being receptive to your reach out and getting back to you and agreeing to connect with you. One is find common ground. And there are a number of ways to warm up a cold reach out. And that's just literally looking for things on their profile that you might have in common. So that could be maybe you attended the same school, maybe you took the same course, maybe you went to the same conference, have a common club or volunteer experience, anything that is in common with you. That's a great thing to mention and kind of gives you a good reason as to how you found them or why you're reaching out. And of course, if you have a mutual person connection, if you know someone in your same network, you can mention that as well. Also keep your messages short and sweet. I'm actually always surprised at some of the messages that I reach out from new people, and they'll be 3 or 4 paragraphs right on the first message. And they're going through their whole career story, their whole background, their goals, and you're just coming in too hot. It's very overwhelming for someone receiving that, and no one wants to go through all of that. So make your reach outs very easy to digest for someone. Your call to action. So in this case, our call to action is connecting for an informational interview. So you want your ask for that to be very easy to agree to, and not something that someone would have to jump through a lot of hoops to make work. So I would suggest asking for a 15-minute call for that informational interview. That's pretty reasonable for most people, or even maybe answering a few questions over email if they're especially busy. I don't recommend asking for a 1-hour in-person coffee chat, for example, unless you have more of an existing relationship with them already. Lastly, when you're reaching out to people for informational interviews, you never want to make it sound like you've just sent 100 of the same messages to 100 different people, and they're all like, hey, can I pick your brain? So you want to spend some time to tailor and personalize your reach outs. You have to give first, and show that you're genuinely interested in their career path. You did your research, you took some time to look at their past work, their history. So just taking that time to mention, like, I really admire your work on this project, or I'd love to ask you more about this point in your career. This is a great way to stand out and make them more likely to say yes. Okay, if we go to the next, yeah, sorry about the typo. Thanks for pointing that out. Here's one, and we will share in a handout afterwards the templates. But this is a quick template of how you could potentially frame your ask and reach out for an informational interview. So hi, name, I'm briefly describe your current role or career goals. I really admire your work on, again, a certain project or a point in their career. I'd love to ask you more about it and learn about your experience in the industry. Do you have 15 minutes to chat with me this week? So super simple. One thing I also wanted to point out for LinkedIn specifically, if you're sending them a connection request with this message, notice how I don't include a space between their name and the first sentence. And the reason for this is with LinkedIn, unlike with an email, you don't have much space or time. Like, you want them to preview your first, like, what is this message about? Who is this person reaching out to me? Like, the quicker that you can have that shown, or they can preview your message, the better. So get to the point quickly, and you don't need any unnecessary spaces there. Yeah, so we talked about the 4 points previously: short and sweet, tailor your message, easy to answer, call to action. That's kind of the fundamentals of this reach out. If we go to the next one, I have another option. Template 2, same thing. So hi, name, I'm your current position at a company. I'm considering moving into another career in industry. Your career trajectory really interests me, and I'd love to ask you more about your experience working at company, something like that. Would you be open to sharing some insights on how you got started in the field over a quick 15-minute chat this week? So same thing. These are just kind of different ways to craft your reach out.
No, this is great. I just wanted to jump in because there's a question in the chat about informational interviews. Are they about them or you? Please clarify. And I wanted to add, like, it's, I think a lot of the time it should be about the person that you're trying to meet, because you're hopefully trying to learn from them, right? So what I like about your templates is that, it's really clear what the ask is, and it's really clear that, it's not something that you're not trying to like sell them on you as a candidate or try to get a job necessarily. It's more about learning about the person their insights.
Absolutely. So that's such a good question. Yes, I would never treat an informational interview as a chance for you to sell yourself and pitch yourself and being like, this is what I have to offer. Like, I'm looking for a job. Can you connect me with anyone? Again, you're coming in way too hot on the first time you're connecting with someone. Maybe you can get there kind of eventually, but this is really an opportunity, like you said, as a chance for you to learn about the industry or the role or the person's background. And they're way more likely to, like, they're going to be able to do that. Like, they may not be hiring right now, or it's too much to ask if you're asking for something from them. So spend that time letting them shine. Just ask questions, I would say, unless they ask you, then you can kind of give them context. But yeah, it's really all about the person you're connecting with. And at the end, they're more likely to, people love talking about themselves. They're going to feel flattered. So they're probably more inclined to, want to maintain that connection and maybe refer you to something else or think about you again if an opportunity does come up. So just keeping those things in mind. If you go to, so I have really quickly a few more templates to share with you. And again, this is going to come out in the handout afterwards, so you don't have to remember them. But this is the follow-up template. So again, when you send a reach out to someone, not everyone's going to get back to you right away, or they may not get back to you as well. And just the nature of, it's kind of like a numbers game. You never know like what people are dealing with, have on their plate. They might be super busy, or maybe they'll see your message and they forgot to respond. So I would say if you don't get a response within 4 to 7 business days. I think that's a reasonable amount of time after to send a follow-up. Like, don't follow up the next day right away. Like, that's too quick. This is something that you can follow up with. So, hi name, hope you're keeping well. I want to follow up on my previous message about a short informational interview with you. I'm sure you have a busy schedule. I'd love to learn more about your experiences and insights in X if you have 15 minutes this week or next. So notice how I, in the first sentence, like right away, remind them about what your message is about. Put that right in the first message, they can see it. So they're reminded, oh, this is what this is about. So they'll have that context right away. Next template, this is how to kind of check in with we talked about one of our main networking goals is to make sure that we're keeping those, tapping into our existing network. So how do we check in with past connections? Maybe someone you met 2 years ago at a conference or whatever it is. You can say something like, hi name, hope you've been keeping well since we last connected. You can specify when that was maybe. Great to see so make sure you take a look at like, what have they been up to? Maybe they shared a recent update. Maybe they just got promoted, or maybe they just shared a project they worked on. Comment about that, show that you kind of been keeping in touch. I remember we chatted about your experience working in blah, blah, blah. Wondered if there's anyone you might know in your network that you could introduce me to, or you can switch just to like, if you do want to chat with them, maybe now about and do an informational interview with them, whatever it is. I'm thinking about pivoting into X, and I'd love to chat with some people to learn more about it. Let me know if anyone comes to mind. So this is a really great way to get some referrals. Again, you'd be surprised at how many people you know that know other people in their networks. If we go to the next one, 2 more templates. So this is just another option again for checking in with existing connections. So hi name, hope you've been keeping well since we last connected. Great to see you. I want to reach out to see how X is going. And if you might have a few minutes to catch up this week with me. I'd love to share an update that you might be interested to hear about and get your feedback on. So maybe that could be like your resume, your experience. Looking forward to connecting again. So just a couple options depending on if you're looking for like referrals, or if you do want to reconnect with them over a call perhaps. And finally, I know we're coming up to time. So our last template, this is kind of something that you can use when you are reaching out to, or after you've applied for a job with a hiring manager or recruiter. So again, I suggest adding this to your checklist every time you apply for a job. A quick template. So hi name, I just applied for the title of the role and want to personally connect with X years of experience in core competency in field. I'm really excited to contribute my skill set and share my ideas. Have a great day. Notice that we are not asking them for something, like we're not asking to chat with them. Like we're literally just saying, like bumping our application, putting ourselves on their radar, keeping in mind that recruiters and hiring managers receive hundreds of messages. So we don't want to ask them for too much, but it's just kind of like a way for them to see that we've applied, put ourselves on the radar. And again, you want to make sure your LinkedIn is top notch, your profile is ready to go. And in your message, really emphasize those transferable skills, especially if you are pivoting, where your core competencies here. And remember, just because that you're coming from a different background doesn't mean that they should or that they will write you off compared to other candidates that are already in the field. I think what really matters is, your ability to bring positive impact to a company. So, your track record, that you've done that you're a capable person, you have transferable skills, that you're learning, you're growing, like maybe you're taking courses again, maybe you're getting certified. But yeah, so that's all I would suggest for that. Moving on to kind of the wrap up of my presentation, we go to the last slide. I want to thank everyone so much for the awesome questions, and I will answer if anyone has other questions that we didn't get to. But here, if you want to learn more about Monday Girl, you can scan the QR code. This is going to take you to our free weekly Monday morning newsletter. I know Mondays, most people hate them. Sometimes I do too. So we like to try to brighten your Monday mornings and start it off with some career tips, some reading recommendations, listening recommendations, job alerts also. So if you are on the job hunt, we share job openings. So you can take a picture and subscribe every Monday morning. We'll send you our newsletter. but that's it.
Okay. Oh, perfect. Thank you so much. So unfortunately, we're out of time. There was a lot of great questions in the chat, and but I think your templates are really great, and we'll be emailing them to everyone later this week. So as well as a recording of this presentation. So again, thank you, Istiana and Dean Hepburn, for joining us this afternoon, and thank you everyone for attending today's event. Tomorrow, like I said, we will be sending out a follow-up email that will include a tip sheet created by Monday Girl with all of those templates and a link to a recording of today's event. Please visit our website, continuing.torontomu.ca, to learn more about the programs we offer. And if you have any other questions, please contact us via email at ce@torontomu.ca. On behalf of the Chang School at Toronto Metropolitan University, thank you for joining us this afternoon, and have a great rest of your day.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much.